Okay, so we're starting recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hope Intervention 6. Nice to see you. Let's go over the agenda for the day, as I like to do in my little organized way. Okay, so first of all, this Hope Intervention is brought to you by the Institute for Love and Time. You can read more about the Hope Intervention. I had my wrong slides up, I just realized, so that got distracted. So let me go ahead and start that again and get the right slides. Here we go. There we go. You can read more about the Hope Intervention at gotill.org/hope-intervention. And we're always thankful to one of our major sponsors, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, or one of our major funders. So this session 6 is about future thinking and optimism. And actually, it's inspired by one of you at our last session. Someone asked about disassociation. Is hoping for the future or connecting with your future self in a positive way actually related to dissociating from the present or dissociating from reality? And so I wanted to get into that and talk about future thinking and optimism. So the schedule is first to talk about 10 minutes about the science of future thinking and optimism. So I'll do that now. Then we'll do some connecting with grounded optimism. That's about 7 minutes with Michael. Then some Q&A in the chat window. I'll ding the chime at 29 minutes and we'll do the summary statement and the homework. So let's begin. So who are optimists? Optimists generally expect things to work out well for them, but they're also able to manage it when things don't. Optimism is, by definition, a position related to how you expect the future to turn out for yourself. So it's really about your future thinking. It's about your future orientation. So optimists are generally more flexible when they shift to new goals. They're more adaptable to any kind of adversity. They have greater psychological well-being and they have greater physical health. So this does not suggest that optimists are dissociating, but we'll talk more about that. But then there's this kind of thing that has been called optimistic future thinking or future fantasies. These are also great for optimists to have if they're true optimists. But if you're a person who's having those fantasies, but they lack realism, that will actually predict depression over time. In other words, if you're a person who doesn't necessarily think things will work out well for yourself, but you have fantasies about future things working out well, but you don't believe in those fantasies and don't act on those fantasies, that actually predicts depression. The thinking on this is, it's not 100% clear why this happens, but some of the thinking is that, look, the imagined future is too dissimilar from the present reality. The gap becomes apparent. There's a feeling that the future self must be much better, or much sort of more valuable or more successful to be worthwhile. And the third is like, basically that comes from me, I think, the way I look at this is that people are not unconditionally loving themselves as they are. So when you have these kind of fantasies that don't reflect actually how you think things will really work out, it's like you're saying who I am is not enough, which is depressing. So I wanted to get graphic about this because I love this graphic in particular. We used this before. But if life always has these ups and downs. So here's a graph of the ups and downs of life over time. And if you're at this red triangle here, oh, do I have a pointer? I don't know if that comes on the recording, but if you're at this red triangle here, you're going to notice things are getting worse. Let's assume your anchor is down here because you're not an optimist. Let's say you're a pessimist. So you're anchoring your thinking about the future here. You're not focusing up here at the top of the peak, you're focusing at the bottom. Here's several things that are going on. Before we talked about even if you have a connection with your future self, if your future self is anchored down here, it's going to be driving you down. You're going to be thinking, yeah, I have a connection with my future self and my future self is in worse trouble than I am now. Things are going to get worse. And your well-being is going to drop like this green line, even below where your life circumstances are, because you're a pessimist. You always think things are going to be getting worse. So it's always going to be below where you are. And then the circle is showing you the narrow radius of where you're considering your future to be. So like if we're thinking about the coronavirus situation right now, it feels like we're going down for many of us. And if you have a narrow radius of where you allow yourself to extend in time. So this is where I am now. If I extend only a little bit into the future, it's really going to help this idea that things are going to get worse because you're not going any broader. Here's another way to do it. If your anchor is up here, so you don't know when this is going to happen, of course, you don't know when there's going to be a peak in your life experience. But if you just say, I'm putting my anchor there, I'm not saying you can cognitively do this or that anyone has the capacity to just do this. I'm just saying when this happens, when you have your anchor here at this peak, and then you bring that future self in relationship to the current self, that drives things up. You have this increase in well-being. But notice that in order to do that, you have to have a much wider sense of yourself in time. You have to include something, especially in difficult situations like a global pandemic, you have to include a much farther off peak in your definition of who you are to contain that optimistic anchor of that future positive place. So in order to do this kind of thing, like, how do you do this? I just said it's not so easy, right? It's just, if it happens, you're happy about it. So in order to do this, one group, the Gabrielle Odingen's group, has done a lot of work on something called mental contrasting, or which is a future thinking intervention. So what they did is they had people write down the best thing that could happen. This is a literal fantasy. Write down the best thing that could happen. In this context of this study, they had 467 overweight, low socioeconomic status fishermen, and they had them write down the best thing that could happen in terms of their weight change. Then they said, what is the biggest obstacle standing in your way? So it didn't just end with the fantasy. It grounded the fantasy in, let's do some future thinking around what are the obstacles, the realistic obstacles standing in your way. And then had them write down the next best thing. If they couldn't have the very best thing, what is the next best thing? And what is the next biggest obstacle standing in the way of that? So it was a real sort of if-then analysis, obstacle/goal analysis of the future. And just doing that intervention 7 months later, you can see on the right-hand side, there's this nice graph, that the folks who did the mental contrasting, this solid line, actually improved their physical activity versus control, who just did a questionnaire. And I think they did some other active sort of process, but it wasn't this process. So that switched this fantasy thinking piece from something that would probably end up being a problem because of the gap between the fantasy and reality to something that was actually modeled. You're basically extending your future self to include reality. If we go back here, can I go back? Oh, that's my summary statement. Yeah, here. You're extending your future self to include this reality. You're actually thinking that this future point, when I say this one, I hope you can see my cursor over here on the peak to the right, that high point actually can sort of live within you now, because you've thought about what you want, and you've also thought about what could get in your way. You've thought about these points. And so you carry that sort of as a light inside of you as you're going down here. You know, sort of the story as you're going down here, if you're in a state of loving yourself as is and accepting what is, the story here is sort of like, this is the part when things are bad. This is the part when things are getting better. This is the part when things are better. So it's like part of a story that's all part of you. Whereas in this situation, instead of saying this is the part when, this is the whole story. Everything's getting worse. Look at that drop. That's all of who I am. It's all getting worse. It'll never get better. That's not even in the conception of who I am. So that's the difference. And that difference, I believe, is related to a sense of love for oneself, unconditional love for what is and what could be, and the continuity between who we are right now and who we will be. And to the extent that we can hold that continuity in love and in our consciousness, and also unconscious minds, probably even more so in our unconscious minds, is the extent to which we are having experiences that optimists have. So these are my thoughts. And I apologize to those who are just joining us. While I'm doing the slides, I can't admit people into the waiting room, so you can watch the video later to find out the graphs and things that I was talking about. But welcome, and we're time to switch over to Michael for our meditation. I'm distracted because I'm letting people into the room as I'm talking. And you need to speak. And also, thanks for the note that you could see my pointer. That's helpful. I can't actually see the notes until I stop screen sharing.
Good morning. That was awesome slides, Julia. Really concrete way of visualizing the difference between the narrow and the long view on that. So hopefully we'll get to talk about that after the meditation too. Well, good morning, everybody. We're just about to sink into practice together. So please find yourself in a comfortable position, as comfortable as you can be. And know we're all here together, supporting one another, being supported by one another. So if you're able to, closing your eyes. If you'd like to keep your eyes open, just do so softly. As a group, let's take a deep breath in. Inhale. And sigh. We've made it. We're together. We're here now. Take a deep breath. And sigh. So allow your body to settle in to what's supporting it, a chair, a couch, a cushion. Allow the body to be fully supported. Let go of tension and weight. Begin to breathe slowly and deeply into the body. Filling the belly and the lower lobes of the lungs with air. Exhaling, the belly pushes back toward the spine. Slow and deep into the whole body. Rest your mind on the body breathing. And you might tell yourself, it's okay to rest. And feel your body's response. Rest your mind on the body breathing. Feel the body expand with breath. And rest on the exhale. As the mind wanders, as it tends to do, just gently guide its attention back to the body breathing. And feel your body breathing. Bring your attention up behind the eyes now. Rest your awareness in the center of your brain, looking out toward the eyes, the infinite space of imagination. So resting in the mind itself. And in this vast space of imagination, bring an image of yourself in the future to mind. Notice yourself in the future. And imagine this self is radiant with good health, well-being. Imagine this person has gone through adversity, gone through it with resilience, with tenacity, has made it through something difficult. Allow your future self to pause in whatever she or he is doing and turn full attention towards you here. And the two of you maintain eye contact. Feel the radiant presence of your future self. This future self who has made it through so much. Just feel the radiant presence, loving presence through that eye gaze back at you. And feel your body's response right here and now to this loving gaze turned back on you. Does your future self have any message for you? It may be nonverbal. It may come straight through the loving gaze. You might hear it in your mind. Feel your body's response, the emotional tone in the body, the feeling tone in the body here now. For just a brief moment, imagine your future self coming right next to you. Standing close, you can feel the radiant presence of love. Where your body's energy and your future self's body's energy merges, touching one another. And feel your body's response here now. Breathe into the present moment, receiving love, feeling love. Soften your face, your eyes. Increase a small smile on the lips or a big one if you'd like. And just breathe into the present moment right here now. And just notice what you feel as we come out of this gentle, soft practice. Notice what you feel and think. Notice any emotions that are present. Without losing this embodied love, this radiant presence, just gently open the eyes, breathing softly and slowly.
Michael.
I needed that. I don't know if you all did, but I certainly did.
I did. I never could get through my slides if I did one of your meditations first because I would talk like half as quickly. So it's really good. It's really good to do those first, but wow, it's so relaxing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wonder, what others are experiencing about that.
Yeah, folks, if you have any responses to the meditation or questions about the slides or just comments, please use the chat window. We don't say the names of people, so if you're trying to remain anonymous for the YouTube video, that's no problem. We won't say your name. Yeah, I agree. Wonderful, much needed.
I know it's difficult sometimes to, I'm doing this in stages. So eventually the hope is we bring that future self actually into our body and we radiate from inward outward, but we're getting used to getting in closer proximity so that shiningness of the future comes really inside of us rather than in proximity.
Yeah, that's clear. And also I wanted to say, I personally thought it was really great how you this time framed the future self as having been through some
Yeah.
adversity with
Mm-hmm.
tenacity and resilience. I thought that was really important.
Your slide helped me do that in a sense of, because it's so often we do dissociate and we
Yeah,
skip, but our future self contains all of that struggle with us.
exactly. The
So
whole
we
thing.
have to bring awareness that we've been through it, that darkness or the struggle is a part of what makes us who we are.
Right. I mean, eventually we get it that the future self and the this self, we're just a self.
Mm-hmm.
We're just extending ourselves over time. So of course it
Correct.
contains it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I feel strongly there's no difference between me here now and me in the future. Yeah, that's just
Mm-hmm.
exactly it. As has been noted, for me, the emotion seems to be key to the connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I
Mm-hmm.
never show, we talk about this a lot, about how the unconditional love, the feeling of connection, of affiliation is important. Of course, there's no data on it yet. I mean, that's some data I'd like to get. So I'm always putting slides up with, papers, citations showing the data that we have. But then there's the data that we don't have. But I strongly feel from experience and working with people that that's the case.
And I'd like to comment on the emotion. For me too, that's where this becomes embodied. This is a non-intellectual meditation activity. We're not cognitively just thinking, we're actually feeling, which is how, for me, it becomes so powerful. I mean, I can tear up doing this activity because I feel the love that I'm needing so much right now from my future self within me. And that's where this becomes so vital and full of life.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
me too. You know, what's his name? Seligman, Marty Seligman wrote this book, Learned Optimism,
Mm-hmm.
about all these cognitive ways you can train yourself to be an optimist. I think it's like so exhausting. It sounds exhausting. I think the way to do it is this emotional,
Mm-hmm.
subconscious connection with your future self, which, oh, by the way, brings up this idea of when people start taking this really literally, they start to think I consciously connected with my future self. So therefore, when I am at that positive experience, I better come back in time and hold this self consciously. But what I think is really going on is you're connecting with your unconscious is connecting with your unconscious, and so you don't have to consciously go back and do this because your unconscious mind is doing it anyway, so you can relax. It's not an agenda item that you then have to tick off. Like, if I don't go connect, then I'm not going to have the positive experience. It's okay. So note here, maybe too far out there. Is that, oh, yep. Sorry. But they say we already did things in the future. So is it that which probability version we
Mm-hmm.
want to experience? Yeah, so there's this idea of sort of the block model of space-time, where everything that will happen has already happened, everything that has happened has already happened. It's one big block, we sort of travel through it. That's one way to think about things, and that certainly some physicists agree with that and other physicists don't. So there's arguments about where we belong in terms of our subjective experience of our lives in the context of that, even if that were the case for physical reality, and that's not even agreed upon. But in terms of trying to answer this question is, are we looking at which probability version we both want to
Mm-hmm.
experience? My experience with talking people about this is it's going down the wrong rabbit hole. It's this fantasy, I think, that people have. If I just think consciously the right way about the future, I will get to experience the best thing. And that feels like it's the ego deciding that it is super powerful and it's gonna like win if it does all the right things, and it feels the opposite of unconditional love for what is. So my advice is don't go down that rabbit hole, because you're not in control, and the whole big universe is in control. So if you define yourself as the entire universe, then you are in control, but that's the only situation in which you're in control. And so if you define yourself as the entire universe, then that automatically includes the future, all possible futures. So then you're in a state of unconditional love. So I would say back off of that egoic sort of like secret, like attempt to control reality and instead connect with what is. I hope that wasn't too long an answer. Michael, did you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, and everything is possible. Every version of our future can be possible. What we're want to be anchored into is unconditional love, radiant presence that travels to any of those probabilities in the future, regardless of what happens. And because that becomes a present moment tool that we carry into any future that we're walking into all day long. So my hope is that we remember this morning throughout our day to bring that future self's love in us. And then we have a whole day of love, and that carries us through whatever we're facing. So for me, that's what it's about.
Yeah, life is always going to be like this. Like, I still think people should be handed a manual when they're born that's like, no matter who you are, this is how your life is going.
Mm-hmm.
So given that, now what?
Mm.
You know? Someone writes, these are pretty cool visualizations, but my future self isn't always fully human, more of an angelic being or an infinitesimal part of God. I guess it depends on how far in the future I go. At least that is what I got today. Yeah, so if you're feeling connected all the way through to some kind of end of life or beyond body or unconscious mind or higher self or whatever you want to call it, if you're sort of not only going across in time, but sort of down and up in depth of who you are, then you're going to have that experience. That makes sense to me.
And that's in the present moment now is true, what is true then. So from a non-dual perspective, we are that infinitesimal part of God right here and now. Just because we're in human form, struggling with human conditions, doesn't mean, in my point of view, in my experience, that it's not also simultaneously true right here and now. So can you rest as that part of you? Can that part of you interact with life rather than just the conditional human self?
Yeah, this is ironic, but I think that what we're both saying is that the real hope is in recognizing that you don't have to do anything.
Mm. We're whole and unbroken, even though it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah. Oh, I have to ding this. Ding. So we have 1 more minute. Any final questions? Okay, well, join us next week. We'll have a social work educator and social worker who will be talking briefly with us about future thinking in the world of mental health practice. And then we'll have some more Q&A with her. So see you then.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.